Thank you for listening to a Vietnam podcast by 7 Million Bikes. We share the stories of people with a love for Vietnam. My name is Niall Mackay and I'm your host. I've lived in Vietnam since 2016 and first started this podcast to know more about this crazy, bustling, energetic city I was living in called Saigon and the people that live there. As the show has grown, we now talk to people from all over the world who have a Vietnam story to share, whether they are locals, foreigners, Vietnamese overseas, or Viet Qs. In season 5, we spoke to Nhi Mai, a Swiss-born and raised Viet Q, who decided to live in Saigon to discover more about her roots and give her another perspective of her motherland. She created a YouTube channel called NowOrNhi to give insight into her life as a Viet Q/expat in Saigon. I was lucky enough to be a guest on her show, and this was the first YouTube interview I had ever done. Nhi wanted to talk to me about how I ended up in Vietnam after living in different countries across the world, the journey of my podcast, and how 7 Million Bikes started hosting comedy shows. Nhi has become a good friend and is an amazing person who at the moment has sadly gone back to Switzerland, but we look forward to welcoming her back to Vietnam soon. While we are between seasons at the moment, Nhi has allowed us to share with you the audio from that interview. So for the first time on a Vietnam podcast ever, you will hear me being interviewed. Thanks, Nhi. Come back soon and enjoy the episode taken from the NowOrNhi YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. There's a link in the show notes. That's it. I'm leaving Vietnam, so I left and I moved to town again. I'm sorry, I'm a total diva.
A little diva here.
All right, that's better.
You ready?
Yeah.
It's Niall. Niall. It's Niall Mackay.
Niall Mackay.
It's Niall Mackay. Okay, again. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel NowOrNhi. Today I have another interview for you guys. It is Niall Mackay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Very glad we could make it today. We are sitting in this quite new coffee in Thao Dien, right?
Yep.
It's your friend's coffee?
Yeah, old ladies drinkery, South African cafe. It's cool.
It's really nice. And it's really quiet also.
Until we got here.
Until we got here. I hope that the audio today is going to be perfect. We ordered our coffee, iced latte, and a cappuccino.
Double shot cappuccino. This is the Adri special if you want to ask for the Adri special.
So before we go into the main topic, which is your passion for podcasts and comedy, I want to know, who is Niall?
So I'm from Glasgow in Scotland originally, and I left when I was like 20 years old. I went to America, then I went to Australia, then New Zealand, then ended up in Vietnam. So I've been all over the world, Jen. So it's been a crazy 20 years.
This sounds like a very interesting life that you are living. How did you end up in Vietnam?
We came here on vacation, actually, first of all, and then we wanted to do like a year-long trip around Europe. My wife and I, we wanted to do a year-long trip around Asia. And so we did Thailand, we did Malaysia, then we came to Vietnam. And we were we did our teacher training here in Vietnam, and then we were going to move on to the next country, keep traveling, and then go back to New Zealand. And like most people, or like many people, came to Vietnam for about 6 weeks, and 5 years later, we're still here.
As some of you might know or might not know, I did an episode with 7 Million Bikes, which is Niall's podcast. How did that actually go? Did someone listen to the podcast?
That's going really well. Our feedback's been really good. And people love it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. They talk about you have a very pleasant voice, which is helpful for your YouTube channel. Speaking in one of your 5 languages, which is very impressive. So, I actually had an email from a listener saying they very much enjoyed listening to your episode and spoke very well.
Oh, thank you very much. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I will link it down below. You should check it out. So today it's my turn to host you. Tell us a bit about 7 Million Bikes.
Well, so it started off as just a hobby. So about, well, coming up nearly 2 years ago, my wife worked on Sundays and I had Sundays off. I was getting to the point where I was so bored, I would just go out on my motorbike for a drive and drive all the way to like D7 and Yabe and back, just because I had nothing else to do, which makes me sound like a loser and I had no friends. And I really enjoyed podcasts. I've always loved podcasts since like way back in university. Ricky Gervais was one of the first podcasts I listened to with Carl Pilkington and Stephen Merchant. A lot of people will know those podcasts. Yeah, one day I was doing the dishes and I was like, I should just do a podcast. Like, how hard can it be? And the thing with podcasts is it's quite a low barrier to entry, right? Like you really just need a microphone. Depends how good you want to make it. So some people will go full out and get a studio and all of this stuff. But in the beginning, I was like, I just need to buy a microphone and then set it up. And so then in that same kind of thought process, I was like, well, what would the name be? And then I think I just read something that there was 7.5 million motorbikes in Saigon. And so I was like, 7 million bikes, that will do. I'm one of these people, I don't really think too much about gas. Like so I had the name, I looked up a microphone on Lazada, which broke after like 6 months. So that wasn't great. But, and then just started making episodes and went from there.
So you just started from scratch.
Yeah. Well, I had to do a lot of research. So one of the exciting things now is I'm actually being hired to help a company make their own podcast. So I'm now producing podcasts for other people. And I didn't realize that all the things I've been learning over the last couple of years as a hobby was actually like a skill.
Yes.
How do you get it uploaded to all the different websites? What host do you use? Just all these kind of like logistical things. Like it isn't as simple as you would just think, like I just make a recording and then poof, it's in the internet.
A lot of words.
See, this is a different trait, but I guess between a perfectionist. So I don't like to do it like perfectly, but I like to do it as best I can in the time limit with the resources that I have.
I see.
So that's maybe not going to be perfect, but it'll be as good as it can be. So I started off doing them at home. It's a really nice story. And I shared this on my podcast recently. So my friend Lewis, who's now basically the producer of the podcast, and his wife Kim came over to my house and he was showing me how to set up the microphone and do all the sound and things like that. And so I recorded his wife just in my living room just to test the sound of the room and things like that. And she studied in the UK for 7 years. She's Vietnamese. She just had a really interesting point of view on life about being an overseas Vietnamese student. What was that like? The challenges, things like this. So we ended up having about half an hour conversation, which was really interesting. Then we moved to the bedroom. I interviewed Lewis because we were just testing the sound. Again, so interesting, so funny. He had all these funny stories about, this is still one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. He went to an art exhibit, like installation performance.
Yes.
And it was microphones, these super sensitive microphones set up, and they were recording the sound of the plant growing.
No way.
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Apart with these microphones, but that you just sat there and. So these were just meant to be tests.
Yes.
And it was so interesting. I was like, so let's use these as episode. I wanted to interview people who had a story to share, regardless of who you are, expat or local or wherever you're from in the world. Everyone's got another layer, right? But I was beginning to realize that so many people in Saigon had that extra layer, but no one knew about it.
Yes.
So that was kind of the idea as well. So I was interviewing people like J.K. Hobson, who was the first person on the show. He's a comedian, he's a teacher, he's a Fulbright scholar, but he'd also been in a, as he calls it, what's the phrase he uses, a moderately famous band from like the 90s, maybe the 2000s. Was it the 90s? Because about 40 guests now. I've interviewed people from all over the world. I've interviewed people in Ireland, people in New York. And then just the main thread is that they have a connection to Vietnam. Maybe the next big step is trying to interview more well-known guests. And I enjoy interviewing anyone, so it's not like I want to interview famous people, but I really think that's probably going to be the way to take it up to the next level.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I'm not famous enough yet to make this blow up. One day, sorry.
But you know what? Maybe one day you'll get famous.
Maybe.
Then this video is gonna blow out.
You get like an email in 5 years. I'd be like, your video just hit 1 million. I'm never going to be famous. Don't worry.
7 million bytes first was a Saigon podcast.
Yeah. So that was that because it was just based in Saigon. His name was 7 Million Bytes Saigon Podcast. But then it started to grow. And as I said, I was interviewing guests from overseas and even people based in Da Nang. And then I looked at where the listeners were coming from, and they were from all over Vietnam and all over the world as well, actually. And so in the beginning of this year, in January, we decided to change the name to a Vietnam podcast, which seems to resonate, I think, better.
Is the content that you create on your podcast always Vietnam related, or how do you choose the people on your podcast?
And I get asked that question a lot recently, and I don't have like a strict criteria. It's just basically, can you talk and are you connected to Vietnam in some way?
Speaking about podcasts in Vietnam, based in Vietnam, how is the scene? Like, are there many? Do you have competitors, or do you have? I don't know. How's the podcast world in Vietnam?
One of the best ways to promote your podcast, apparently, what I read is that that someone comes on your channel and then you promote them and vice versa, like we're doing right now,
Like a
right?
collaboration, right? Yeah.
The analogy that really stuck in my head was it said the rising tide floats all ships. So if all the podcasts do well, they'll all do better. So it's not about like trying to compete for listeners, because chances are if someone likes my podcast, I mean, they listen to podcasts, so they might more than likely to listen to someone else's. I did look around to see like who else is doing a podcast. And thankfully that time, I think there was only one in English language anyway. There might have been more in Vietnamese, but I'm not sure. So there's maybe around about 10, less than 10 English language ones.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of Vietnamese language ones, but I don't know what they talk about.
I don't know what it was exactly. It was a statistic or something that you posted on your Facebook about for a ranking or something.
Yeah.
What was that exactly?
Well, there's two things I found out recently. One was that, I peaked at number 6 in Vietnam on the Apple podcast chart.
Wow.
Which is pretty awesome.
That's good.
Yeah. It's pretty,
Number 6 in Vietnam.
yeah, not every week, but that was my top chart. I peaked at number 6.
Yeah.
But then the one that like blew my mind was I found some website called listennotes.com, which I'd never heard of. And it said 2 Million Bikes was in the top 10% of podcasts in the world.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's 2 million podcasts in the world. So that means I'm one of 200,000, which sounds less impressive.
What do you think made your podcast so popular?
I'm a shameless promoter.
So you're like a spammer on every Facebook group, and
Yeah.
do you think that helped?
I don't know. I ask myself that question all the time. Some people, and again, I read this on the groups, they're like, how do you promote your podcast? I'm scared to like share it. I'm scared to put myself out there. And I'm just kind of one of these people that's like, meh. So I just like,
We're talking about podcasts a lot now. And you know what? Like, I'm not really a podcast listener unless I know that person or it is like something that really interests me. I'm just more, I guess, on other media, like YouTube and Instagram. What do you think are the advantages, or why should someone listen to podcast?
Well, it's funny because I think it was in my grandpa I was talking to that last week about my podcast. And he said to me, what time is it on at? And I think, no, it's like
Always.
It's like the radio on the internet. You can listen to it anytime you want. So, but to answer your question, so for me, I never watch YouTube. I never watch Instagram TV. And I know those are massive mediums. And I know there's so many people out there who watch that so much. Hence why we're making a YouTube video right now, right? But that's just not me, because I never have the time to sit and watch a video. But I have time to, like I mentioned, do the dishes. I can listen to a podcast. I can be working on the computer, listen to a podcast. My sister has like, what do you call them? Waterproof headphones. So you could swim and listen. I've never done that.
Wow.
I could swim and listen to a podcast. All I mostly would do is when I'm driving.
Yeah.
So I don't listen to music generally because I find it distracting and I want to hear what's going on around me. I can listen to a podcast while I'm driving as well. So that's the main thing for me is the difference. You can do it while you're doing other things.
Besides being a podcast host, I know that you also do comedy.
I do.
Where does this come from? Has it always been a passion?
Yeah, always. I mean, we've got a rich comedic history in Scotland. You know, comedy and stand-up comedy is just ingrained in our DNA and in our nature. And then we've got Billy Connolly, who most people will know, I would imagine who Billy Connolly is. He's from Glasgow like me. He's just literally like a god in Scotland. He's just the most talented, funny person in the world. And so just growing up from a young age, stand-up comedy is just something that's really natural. There's a grew older and listened to things like Phil Hicks and George Carlin and Lenny Bruce, people who use comedy to make a social message.
Yeah.
That was when it really got me hooked, was like, oh, these guys can like talk about some really deep topics that really resonate with you. I've not become the comedian I thought I would become, but I think I've now become more like Billy Connolly, who's my hero, he just tells stories and silly jokes. So I'm not comparing myself to Billy Connolly because that's incomparable, but in style of comedy.
I didn't know before I knew you that there was like such a big comedy scene in Saigon, in Vietnam. Like, I saw your performance 2 weeks ago. The lineup was impressive.
Yeah.
So much fun.
I used to work for a charity. I put on a charity comedy show, a couple of them, because one, I loved comedy, and one or two, I knew how to put on events, and three, it was a good way to raise money. But then from then, I was like, well, why don't I just put on my own shows? So I started putting on my own shows, and now then 7 Million Bikes grew from just being a podcast to being comedy shows as well.
What kind of people are coming to these shows? Or is it mostly expats?
Mostly, yeah. I'd say probably 80 to 90% expat. For the show that you came to, we did some advertising in Vietnamese, obviously making it clear that comedy was going to be in English, but there's obviously so many people here that speak English and also are exposed to Western culture, like so Netflix comedies and YouTube comedies, whatnot. I'd love to have Vietnamese comedians perform.
Yeah.
But they've all gone to perform in Vietnamese.
Is there anything that you kind of wish more of in the podcast or in the comedy scene from Vietnam?
You are the prime example when you said I never knew that this comedy scene existed. It's the most common feedback we get. So for me, obviously, like I'm surrounded by it day and night. I could tell you what show is on tonight, tomorrow, every night. There's basically a comedy show on nearly every night, every district.
What about the future of 7 Million Bikes? Do you have any upcoming projects or your dream with 7 Million Bikes?
Well, we got season 6 coming up soon, so we'll start recording that in early May. The comedy shows now, I've got 4 a month that I do in Saigon. Just get more people to know about comedy, come out to shows. You'll have such a great time if you come out. I think the thing which maybe people would assume, which I would assume as well, that it's going to be amateur comedy. If you come out to any show in Saigon, it won't be like that. It's going to be the standard of comedy here will absolutely shock you. This week, I'm now flying up to Da Nang in Hoi An, so I've got 3 shows in central Vietnam.
Wow.
That was really exciting. I got invited to go up there and do shows.
Thank you so much, Neil, for taking your time to join me today. It was very interesting to know more about why you're laughing.
Because you can't get my name right. Thank you for having me on it. It's been awesome. It was my first YouTube interview.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that. Check out 7 Million Bikes.
Can you tell the viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So you can Facebook, Instagram. There's some comedy videos on YouTube, so you can check them out. But I'm not a YouTuber like yourself. I've got a website as well, 7millionbikes.com. You find all the events on there, all the events on Facebook, and come to a show. It'd be awesome to see you there. You'll have a good time.
Yeah, I will link everything down below. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye.
You should go back to the beginning of this video, get a bottle of booze, and every time we say the word podcast, you have to take a drink.
That would be, yeah.
Because they'll be smashed by now. I don't know how many times we've said that word. We've said that word about 100 times.
Yeah.
Hột gà nước, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, bất xào đây.
Thank you again to NowOrNhi for letting us share this episode. It was so much fun. Like I said, make sure you subscribe to our channel, NowOrNhi on YouTube. The links are in the show notes. Enjoy these bonus episodes while we get ready for season 8, starting in January 2022. Cheers.
Xào đây. Bất xào đây.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease, and I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you are listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.